Evermore podcast is now sponsored by WFST Total Compliance. WFST provides fire safety requirements UK-wide to prepare you and your employees should the worst happen. Do what you do best and visit wfst.co.uk today. Enjoy the episode.
Sunderland 0, Newcastle United 2. Isak from the penalty spot. Sunderland 0, Newcastle United 3.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Monday night. Me and Mark are back asking the question we always ask every single Monday night. I just needed a moment there to get over that beautiful new intro video, Mark. That is bringing back fond memories of the weekend, but we're going to get stuck right into that in a minute. We are asking that question. We always ask, what's going on? And I'm going to ask you in a second, Mark, what's going on. But firstly, what's going on with you? Then I'll ask you what's going on.
What's going on? I am realising I may have to turn the music slightly down in that intro because it does kick in rather loud. So apologies.
Yeah, it's a bit like an advert when you're watching the ITV player when it just blows your eardrums off, and the program's quite quiet, yet the adverts are extremely loud. Well, just while you're contemplating that thought, I'll tell you what's going on with me. I'm a little bit perplexed, I must admit. I'm a little bit confused. Now, before I ask you this question, I just want to tell everybody who's watching that I'm no professional fundraiser by any stretch of the imagination. I've collected some money, doing a Great North Run once upon a time, and it was very, very good. But, if I was going to raise £17,000 to fund some kind of crowd spectacular, I think I could do a shite site better than spend it on 17,000 tonic tea cakes and wave the rappers in the crowd like these shithouses did at the weekend, Mark. What in the name of holy fucking Christ was that monstrosity at the weekend? Jesus H. Christ.
Look, here's the goal. I keep clicking on it. Here's the goal. No, you still can't hit it. No,
arrows pointed. Of course, for anybody who's listening on the audio, that was me putting up the ridiculous campaign that I think was conducted by the Spirit of 37, which miraculously have disappeared to plain sight. Yeah, they were last seen walking into Hayes Travel and walking out with a fucking cruise brochure under their arm. So I think you'll see the end of them guys.
To Vegas, that's where they're off to.
Exactly. They spent 17 grand on cruises and put a fiver into B&M's and bought loads of tonic tea cakes and waved the fucking rappers in the crowd. But yeah, that was only part of the hilarity of the Tyne and Weir derby in the week that's gone by, mate. We're going to get stuck right into this. Just before we do, a little reminder to anyone who's watching, if you haven't already, click subscribe. I'd love you to come and join us. We're over 6,200 subs, all free content and evermore. But if you do want to give a little bit back to the channel, there is an option down there for you. We are live tonight as well. We've already got some of you wonderful people in the comments already, still grinning ear to ear from the derby at the weekend. We did actually have a Sunderland fan in the post-match comments. God bless them, who did stick the head above the parapet. I did not shoot it off. Brave. Did not, yes, because they were very respectful. And if there is any Mackhams in the comments, you are welcome here. It is a safe place. We don't discriminate against you, whether you're from America or not. Cough, another subject. Maybe, yeah, we'll talk about that tomorrow. I don't know what you're talking about. Where are you looking at, Matt? Where are you looking anyway?
All I can hear is a creak coming from the floorboards upstairs. I'm wondering what the hell's going on.
Exactly. Cool. We love Americans. Of course we do. And so do Newcastle. We'll get stuck into this in a minute, I'm sure. But first way to start off, mate, there's no better place to start really in the hospitality that was afforded to our wonderful football club this week. The red and white carpet, as we've called it. Now, there's so much to pack in. I've actually been out for a meal in Sunderland. No, it wasn't cheesy chips, before you ask me, before anybody says in the comments. I have never experienced the levels of hospitality that Newcastle United have experienced this week, Mark. Not only did Sunderland decide to redecorate their bar to make Newcastle feel more comfortable at home, then change it after all of the Mackhams lost their shit over it. They then decided to give us a complimentary beer because the Wi-Fi was down. And then, even better, on the football pitch, they decided to gift us 3 goals. I mean, mate, if it was TripAdvisor, you'd be scoring them big time, wouldn't you?
Definitely. Absolutely. I mean, you throw in the bar, the beer, That we'll call it a shit show of a display that they had as well, and pointing out that their colours are surely red and white, not silver and red and silver.
Yeah.
The fact that they reused stuff from Remembrance Sunday or Remembrance Day display, and half the other ones looked like paper tissues that had just been rolled out from Andrex or whatever. They're obviously accusing their own fans of stealing their own money. They were fighting amongst themselves in the stand, and they were leaving early. So yeah, that's it's just about as good as of an outcome you can have from them, can't you? Then they've properly rolled out the black and white carpet for years and gone, just come in and have what you want.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think one of the best things, if you just look at Simon's comments there, he's saying what was more hospitable, the bar, the beer, or Beale's tactics from playing out from the back. We'll get into this in a minute, Simon. But one of the best things I've seen, kind of fast forwarding to the end of the game, was Michael Beale, who obviously my dad being a Celtic fan, his exact summary of Beale's managerial capabilities was, he's fucking shite, by the way, was pretty much as much detail as he gave. And judging by the weekend, he's probably right. But Beale said it was great feedback for his team. And I had to kind of, have a moment there. I said, does this guy think this is a fucking appraisal? You've just been dumped out of the FA Cup by your fiercest rivals, and you've not even attempted to play, really, apart from Pritchard's couple of attempts. That I think we were just kind of scratching our nuts at that point, I think, and guessing who we're going to get in the next round. But I mean, what on earth is he talking about? Great feedback. And that's not what the fans want to hear, is it?
No. It's weird because the way that game panned out, you thought for sort of 25 minutes, it was, the quality was on show from Newcastle. There was a very definite gap in terms of quality between the two, but the effort was there. The commitment to the cause, all that kind of stuff was there. And then it all sort of died a little bit flat. And I know they're a young side, and I know they're growing, and they need more experience. And then that's a massive thing that they're missing out of that entire squad. But comment like that just seems, it's a bit wishy-washy, isn't it, from your gaffer in the aftermath of a 3-0 defeat by your closest rivals, and you just think, no, that's not what I want. But look, he's the mastermind behind Steven Gerrard's genius. Read into that what you will.
Please don't make me try and say the name of that club again. You know I can't do it. Stop trying to trip me up.
Ettifaq. He's out the door soon anyway, isn't he? So let's not go there again.
He is pretty much. But yeah, you know who reminded me of Mr. Britass. Remember that TV show, Mr. Britass?
Yeah.
He used to say things like that. It's great feedback, Colleen, and stuff like that. That's kind of the way he reminded me of that kind of guy. And listen, Sunderland had a young side, right? And I was nervous about this game. I wasn't alone. There's loads of Newcastle fans who were nervous about this game in the lead up to it. Within 10 minutes of that game, I sat there and I thought to myself, what was I nervous about? These are shit. Like, they had absolutely nothing to offer Newcastle United whatsoever. And predominantly, we won this game because you had a couple of kids in the midfield trying to deal with this motherfucker right here. And I'm not being funny. He was swatting them off like flies at a picnic. I mean, Joelinton was immense in that first half, Mark. I mean, we'll get into the injury in a minute, but he was immense. I mean, look at that leg. I mean, what's that famous line that Thor says in the Avengers? You know what's coursing through my veins right now? I mean, that's just pure bestiality, isn't it, really, from Joelinton? I mean, if you're Job Bellingham, or Diet Jude, as we refer to him as, it tastes the same without all the flavors, really. Any of the talent added. Poor lad, because he looks like Jude Bellingham and his name's Bellingham. Everyone was assuming he was going to be really good, but this poor little toddler come up against this monster, and he just got annihilated, didn't he? Like, I forgot he was even playing at one point.
He was quiet. Like, there were a couple, and it kind of, again, we go back to levels. And Newcastle were so far above in that regard that, look, Job, he's a decent player. I think there's a little bit too much hype at the moment. We've definitely seen that he's not ready for the Premier League. All this talk about him getting a move in January or in the summer, he's not ready for it yet. Look, when you go back and watch Jude play, Jude was so many levels above Birmingham City when he was there. he was streets ahead of them, and needed to go. I think Job is. He probably needs another couple of seasons at that level to kind of learn his game a little bit more. He just couldn't get into it. Newcastle midfield was excellent. I thought Joelinton was phenomenal first half. Bruno was fantastic. He didn't have a sniff. And the other one that all Sunderland fans were raving about before the game, and actually he's put in decent performances recently, is Clark, and he was completely anonymous as well. You forgot he was playing too.
He did, absolutely. Just in the comments there, we've got a donation from Insanity 499. Thank you so much for that, buddy. Evening, lads. Cracking one of the weekend. Hopefully that kicks us on. Have a great second half of the season. Looking forward to tonight's show.
Bro.
Great to see you in the comments, mate. But yeah, I mean that's a big thing. We'll come on that in a minute. But I mean, going back to the the hype, the Mackems hype, and it was weird. It was, I think, even as Newcastle fans, because we've been in a bad run, a run that we weren't used to. This used to be a run that was just an everyday occurrence for Newcastle, but because we were so used to winning games and playing in style, we weren't used to getting beat off teams. We weren't used to, struggling and chasing the ball and feeling a bit deflated, coming on doing these post matches and being a bit, oh Jesus, that was a bit shit. That we almost bought into the hype that the Mackems were starting to build. Once you could understand what they were saying on some of the videos, it was quite humorous going around an X that half of it needed subtitles, didn't it? But you couldn't understand a word half of them saying. But we started to buy into this hype that everything was kind of teed up, giant killing. We haven't played them for so long. The run we're on, you're fucking hell, these lot could do us. But the reality of the game was, and credit to Eddie Howe and credit to the lads, the professionalism shown by the lads to go into that game and just not take it for granted, put in a proper shift, play professionally, play well. It was epitomised by Joelinton and Bruno, definitely 100%. But I mean, even trips as well. I said this to a mate today. I noticed even walking into the ground. I mean, Burn Cup in his ear was class, and then you got Trippier just seemed to have a smile, a smirk, a little cheeky. That confidence was back. We're not going to speculate. We're not going to speculate what was going on with Trippier and all the rumours and all that stuff. Some pretty crass chanting by the Mackems, to be fair to him as well. But he seemed to be enjoying it and thriving off of it. He was smirking when he was taking corners, and that bit when he points to the badge and points to the scoreline when it's 2-0, and he seemed like the Trippier of old as well, didn't he? Just away from the midfield for a minute, he was brilliant again. And he didn't have to be, because Jack Clark was basically the invisible man. But it was great to see Trippier back, wasn't it? Back to what we've seen from Trips.
He got that little bit of swagger back about him. Whatever's gone on, who knows? But he's looked off his game for a little while, and he sort of, you're right, he had that spark, he had that swagger. He looked like he properly enjoyed. He's not looked like he's enjoyed a game of football for weeks. He really enjoyed that on Saturday. He looked like he was absolutely loving it, and he was, again. It's one of those where leaders stand up, leaders take hold, and they get hold of games like that and take their team through. The likes of him and Cher and Bruno, and even, to be fair, give Mickey an awful lot of credit. His pressing on Saturday
he was brilliant. He was brilliant.
Insane. He didn't give them a moment's peace, and he hounded them constantly and puts the pressure on to create that second goal so early in the second half. He just didn't give them a sniff, and I thought he was exceptional. I know we've given him some stick recently, and rightly so, because he has been poor, but I thought he had a particularly good game on Saturday as well.
Yeah, Jordan saying Gordon was his man of the match. Gordon was good as well. He had that fire back. We saw the shithouse side of Gordon, the player that we all hated at Everton, and now we love him because he's in a black and white shirt. And I love that. I mean, Hume was very lucky he didn't get a red card, because if you're going to book Gordon for doing that, you need to book Hume for doing it as well. And the ref bottled that a little bit. And I love the bit when he had his shirt, and Gordon's just going, "I'll give it you after the game. Don't worry about it." I love that shithousery, And it's weird because people have said that, where's Eddie's shithouse mags gone? Where's the time wasting? Where's the winding opponents up? Where's the managers losing their marbles on the sideline? It's almost like we took the foot off the gas doing that. But the weekend was a bit of a return to the shithouse mags, really, and it was great to see. I mean, I think we revelled in the moment. I mean, obviously Sunderland, their fans. They were, it was the biggest game for them in years. And to be fair, it was a huge game for us as well. I'm not going to deny that. But, I think the occasion very quickly become too much for those young players. Those young players will probably learn a bit from that. I know I'm taking a piss out of Beale about feedback, but they will learn from that because that's a huge game against proper opposition that have just, battered PSG in the Champions League this season. So that's a good sign, make no mistake about it. For Sunderland's level, that's a very good sign. And young players like Bellingham and again, I know on the post-match, some people were asking me what I was talking about. I thought Ballard actually handled Isak all right for a spell, but then Isak's quality just shone through in terms of his pace, his movement, his ability to find those positions that he does, his quick feet. I mean, the Luko 9 tackle, we've got to talk about that. Obviously everyone's talking about him, being this big hard man and all that. And he nails Louis Miley, who A, is 17 years old, B, is not particularly fast, C, has played about 400 games in the last 12 days or something like that. He looked knackered, did Louis, when he come on for Joelinton. And not to mention, Louis just got straight back up. It's not like he was lying
about it. This blood and thunder, and don't get us wrong, it was great to see.
It was a proper tackle.
Like that.
It was a proper tackle. I did like the ref did let some good tackles go. To be fair,
yeah, and that was great to see. And I want to get into another conversation in a second about VAR, so we'll circle back to this just quickly. But that tackle, it harks back. Do you remember the? Was it the Rangers Celtic game where Scott Brown absolutely cleans through one of the Rangers players, perfectly legal play? The Rangers player.
Oh yeah.
Almost 3 flips in the sky. It was like that. It was a great challenge, and then just to see Miley just go, okay, I'm back up again. Let's go.
Yeah, it was great. And Longstaff had one earlier, didn't he, with one of the players? And it was a proper 50-50. And the two of them got up and didn't make a big meal of it. And it was a bit of a throwback. I mean, McCoyce was in the comments saying he was like licking his chops. It was almost like a Celtic and Rangers game for him. He was really enjoying it. But yeah, all this talk about Luke O'Neill being a hard man. He does that on Louis Miley when they're 2-0 down. Not going to get you a goal. And then not 2 seconds, probably about 10, 15 minutes later, he tries out an Isak who just goes, whoop, and just moves his foot. O'Neill just disappears. Then all of a sudden, Ballard's got Gordon bearing down on him, who, to be fair, is going nowhere. But Gordon actually, if you look at it again, Gordon looks at him and just goes, yeah, you're going to smack me. I'm going to take this and get a pen. And that's exactly what he does. And we'll get into Isak, and then Isak puts the pen away really well. But, I mean, I didn't for 1 second, I said this in post-match, I didn't for 1 second, Mark, think that Sunderland were ever going to get back in that game after the first goal went in.
No, I think they said in commentary, whoever kind of gets the first goal, it kind of sets the tone. And right, to be honest with you, right from the first couple of minutes and sort of Longstaff's miss, or his header that was saved. I mean,
should have had two goals, Sean.
He could have had the perfect hat trick within the first 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Jesus, what would everybody be thinking about in them? But that set the tone, and I don't really think Sunderland ever really recovered from that, because it was kind of obvious at that point. It was just a matter of time before the quality shone through. And that ball through down the left, obviously, for Joelinton to run onto by Bruno. And then the ball across was a brilliant ball across and left Ballard in sort of.
He had to try to deal with it.
But if he doesn't, Isak's behind him for a tap in. So yeah, exactly. He's got to do something. But he just got his body shape wrong. But it's weird, because you were right. And you text me just before and just kind of say, actually, he looks a decent defender. And he is. He's a decent defender.
Yeah, he looked okay.
He's got a lot to learn, I think, in that regard. And coming up against the quality of somebody like Anthony Gordon or Isak. And Gordon played him massively, and he did the same with Trey Hume. Macklem was giving it big uns that Trey Hume was going to teach Gordon a lesson, and he had him on toast.
Absolutely,
it was ridiculous.
But
yeah, he sucked him into that penalty, Ballard, in the second half, and you could see it coming a mile off. It was frustration. It was just, well, I'm not getting there. I'm going to get you, and there's going to be a penalty all day long, that one.
Yeah, and a couple of nice saves from Dubravka as well along the way.
Yeah,
the
one with his feet was.
Yeah, the one with his leg was brilliant. It deflected off Botman, didn't it? And I mean, it's weird because obviously we dominated the game and we didn't look under any pressure really in terms of. I mean, Evie could have made the subs even quicker. I understand why he didn't, because he wanted to make sure about it. But I think the one thing, I'm not being negative, but I thought Botman and Shea at times overplayed a little bit. I think against better opposition, we might have been in trouble. I think they took maybe some unnecessary touches, Shea flicking it up, trying to head the ball out and all that kind of stuff. And it was almost like he was taking the piss a little bit. I mean, if Sunderland had a proper centre forward, we might have been in trouble at one point in that game. But I just think that we, because they didn't have that presence, and their midfield was just a couple of kids really that couldn't deal with the monstrosity that they were dealing with in the shape of Joelinton. And then obviously once Bruno started getting on the ball, he was just taking the piss when he was just, little touches, little stud rolls here and there, whipping balls all over the shop. And, and he never looked the 1 second that he wasn't in control of that game, Joelinton. And it was great. It was great to see. And, Newcastle needed that. Eddie Howe needed that, and it was great to see, obviously, the, the dominant performance. But I mean, I suppose the star of the show, Joelinton went off. He was amazing. But the guy who grabbed all the headlines was Alexander Isak, Mark, wasn't it? And we asked that question, is Isak back? I mean, he looks sharper and sharper with every game that's played. I mean, that foul, well, I wouldn't say foul, that challenge by Ballard, I don't think it was a foul. I thought it was a little bit of both. I think they both had a piece of each other. But you give Isak another 2 or 3 games match fitness, Ballard gets nowhere near him because he's away from him with a clean pair of heels. Is Isak back? I mean, obviously with the whole Wilson scenario, which is very strange. I've seen some journalists on Twitter tweeting that Newcastle might look at selling a player to balance FFP this window, but it won't be a first-team player. So that probably rules out Callum Wilson. But people have already started talking about Wilson's future and what does it hold. We need Isak to stay fit, that's for sure. But is he back? I mean, he's on 13 goals now, Mark. Could he push to 20?
A fully fit Isak for the rest of the season scores you 20 easy. I don't think there's any doubt there. It's keeping him fit, and I guess limiting minutes is going to be not that difficult given that the number of games is less than it perhaps could have been. I still think you need the option off the bench to give him. He has a brilliant 60 minutes. You bring him off and give him half an hour's rest, and you wrap him up and wait for the next one. If Wilson's fit and around, great. You've got that there. If he's not, you really need to be looking at another option to come off the bench. Maybe he's a younger loan move or something like we talked about Ekitike before. Somebody like that where they can come off and give you a solid 30 minutes with no problem. But he's found his form again, hasn't he? He's found that little spark. He looked so jaded for so long, and I think it was because he'd come back far too quickly. We'll go back to that PSG game where he could barely walk at the end of it, let alone run. But he's just found that little spark in his game again. He looks like he's like Trippier. We said before, he's enjoying it, and he looks like he's happy. He looks like he's fitter than he perhaps has been all season, to be fair, and that bodes well for the rest of the season.
Absolutely. I mean, the story goes in terms of Harvey Barnes. They're going to assess Harvey Barnes' condition. I actually have a feeling I think Barnes is going to need an operation. I can just see this coming. I just feel like with all the noise in the background with the physios and all of the stuff, and the change in personnel, and it's been very quiet on Barnes. I've just got a bad feel that Barnes is going to need an operation, and apparently that's going to make Newcastle look at an attacking player. Now, the playing spotters are already out. It wouldn't be a transfer window if the playing spotters weren't out. There's even playing spotter accounts on Twitter now, specifically NUFC playing spotters. And there's a flight coming in from a private flight coming in from Paris to Newcastle. So people are already whacking the Ekitike hashtags underneath.
It's Mbappe.
Of course it is. Why not? Why wouldn't it be? He obviously had a taste of it. And he thought, I fancy a bit of this. But in all seriousness, Ekitike is obviously not in a good place. I think he's come out. He's been quite honest and raw actually about how he's, mentally he's feeling the fatigue of not playing and all that kind of stuff. Some fans, have already made their mind up and said, you had your chance, fuck you shithouse. And other fans are saying, well, actually, you got to look at FFP, get the lad on loan, with an option to buy, see what he can do. If he turns out to be a really good player and a good option for Wilson, does Wilson become the third striker and Ekitike becomes the alternate striker between him and Isak, But one thing's for sure, I personally do believe that we need another centre forward. And you said that numerous times as well. We need another striker in that attacking berth. It's probably going to have to be a loan dealer. I think the nature of football right now with FFP, not to go off on one about this, but the FFP scenario isn't really helping clubs invest and grow. It's limiting their options. It's making clubs have to do what Aston Villa did with Jack Grealish, sell him for 100 million and reinvest that into the squad. Now, a lot of people might go, "Oh, that's a good business model to have," but what happens then is you just create this cartel of 4 clubs who are mega rich that are able to go and spend massive amounts of money every single summer and January, and then the other clubs can't compete. So it doesn't really make it fair when you've got owners like Newcastle, owners like Villa, who can throw a bit of money at it, and say, well, do you know what, we'll throw a couple of 100 million at Eddie Howe or Emery and say, go and get 2 or 3 really class players and push for top 4 or the title. The FFP ruling, I think, is coming under some severe scrutiny now, and the latest round of getting people done like Forest and I think Everton might be in line for another doing, but City, again, it's all quiet. Nothing's happening with them. So, I mean, I think long-winded way of saying it, that the transfer window, Newcastle do need a couple, if not 2 or 3 players, I think, Mark, just to help this momentum push for the maybe top 5 or top 4, if possible.
Yeah, I come back to the Wilson one. I know Wilson's been talked about with potentially being an option to sell as well, because there's a saleable asset there.
Yeah,
and
I
some
can
of
see
the
Wilson's
comments
done the summer.
Yeah, and that's one of the things actually we wanted to touch on tonight was transfer sort of stuff. So there's not, FFP wise, it's a difficult one for Newcastle because there's not a huge amount of sort of sellable assets that will get you an awful lot of money to be able to go and sort of spend much more. The Villa deal for Grealish was great for them because the fact that he was an academy prospect that came through, so it's pure profit. You haven't really got that. The ones that will command sort of big fees, you're looking at Bruno, but you've still got to pretend you've got money invested in that deal already that you pay then off and use the rest as profit. There's an awful lot of players that are out of contract at the end of the season. Like Gillespie, Lascelles, unless he gets a new deal. Richie, Carriers, Dummett, Kraft, Manquillo, Hendrick, all out of contract. There's nothing there that it's not going to free up an awful lot of wage budget. You're then looking at Fraser's got a year left. That's a sellable one. Jamal Lewis looks to I think he's got an option for Watford to buy him as well. So there's one. Hayden's still got 2 years left on his deal.
They're going to terminate that contract, aren't they? From what I gather, they're going to scrap it.
So there was the potential for that, or could they get something for him? I think they'll go the route of terminate the contract or mutual, where they pay him off. Matty Target, probably one that you can make a little bit on, but then you're looking at the likes of Dubravka in the summer to make some money with a year left. Longstaff, who's got a year left. Does he become, because he's one, and there not be an awful lot left over on that. So again, if it's 25, 30 million for Miggy, then that's 25, 30 million towards the the next budget. Longstaff is an ideal one in that scenario because he didn't cost you a penny. He is an academy one. There's not anybody else really. Miley would be the other one, but you're not in a million years going to go anywhere near selling that lad.
He's got a higher ceiling, I think, than Longstaff. I like Sean. Yeah. I like Sean. I mean, I wouldn't want to sell Sean because I think he's a good player to have in the squad. He's got the energy. He's got the passion. He knows all about the club and the games like that. The weekend. I mean, if Sean can just control his kind of temperament in the box, he probably scores a hat-trick and is a hero forevermore. Really, isn't in that Tottenham derby? But he does bring the energy to the side, does Sean, and I think we can't completely gut that squad because FFP is preventing us even, growing. As Terrific Lad says here, it's a way to prevent the smaller clubs from challenging the big clubs, and the whole thing stinks, and it really does. And George backed up by saying fix football potential because it really does. It really does seem that way, and I think there'll be a lot more people wanting answers about FFP. I think a lot of the other clubs, if you will, the second Premier League within the Premier League are all starting to kick up fuck a little bit about it, and I think there is going to be pressure on it, more pressure on dealing with the likes of City and Chelsea to what you're going to do about their breaches, because you can't just stop punishing everybody else and let them slide because they're sexy and marketable for the Premier League. And that seems to be the kind of rule of thumb at the minute, really, which is not good. Coin's making a comment there as well. Plus, Longy fits the club trained quota, which is really useful as well. Yeah, of course, if we're in Europe as well. We've got the mighty win in the comments saying, not to pour cold water, but if anyone thinks Saturday's performance will beat Premier League teams, I think they've got another thing coming. We need a proper elite strike. I don't disagree with that win, but we don't have the budget for that in January, mate. I think we have to just get a body in that can occupy defenders without sounding like Steve Bruce and maybe get you a goal or two.
That comment with regards to the performance, a performance for that game, and I think you take the situation and say it was a good performance against a team that really should be beating, and the fact that yes, that performance won't beat a Liverpool, it won't beat a Manchester City, but you play those games differently. They played Sunderland perfectly, really, in that game. They controlled the ball. They didn't do an awful lot wrong. They didn't give the ball away an awful lot. There were 1 or 2 moments where they did.
Yeah.
But generally, they played that game to perfection. Didn't
play the occasion. Yeah, they played the game.
Yeah, exactly. Play the occasion. That's the way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's a good point. And you've just got to do the same thing. It was a confidence, massive confidence booster.
We'll see the fruit of the labours for how we play against City. If we come out against City with the chests out, you've got to remember as well, there's a nice chunk of time between, the derby and City. We've got time in the training pitch, time to come out and put that into practice as well. And it'll be interesting to see how we come out and play against City, because if we get a result against City at home, we'll go in that Villa game full of confidence. Villa obviously just nicked it 1-0 against Borough, who played really well as well, by the way, in the cup. And it was a good strike by Cash. Takes a bit of a deflection, goes in, but Villa could have easily been taken to a replay on that one, back to Villa Park, because they did a really good job. Did Middlesbrough on them, but I think Villa haven't gone off the rails by any stretch. They're still winning games, but that kind of momentum that they had is slowed a little bit, and I think it's a good time to probably play Villa, especially if we go off the back of beating the Mackems, beat City, go to the Villa game. I wouldn't say confidence will be sky high, but our confidence will be a lot higher going to Villa Park than it would have been, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Tell you what, if there's a good result against City, that then leads into the rest of the month. Is the fourth round the 27th or something like that?
I think so. Just being announced tonight. We might as well talk about it. Just being announced tonight. It's Fulham away. Or Fulham, as goal would have pronounced it. That's not a bad time. You're looking at all the teams that were up there, and we could have had a lot worse. There was some good ties against each other. Was it Chelsea got Villa, didn't there? That's 2 teams that could take each other out. And Spurs got City. So again, that's 2 big teams that could take each other one of each other out. So that kind of gets rid of a lot of competition to win the FA Cup, effectively, doesn't it? Really, Liverpool is the one I was worried about. They got a relatively easy tie, didn't they? So they should probably progress through further than that, unless they have a mare.
Yeah, it's frustrating when you see the way that the draw panned out at times, and you look at it and you go, Norwich or Bristol Rovers for Liverpool, Manchester United, who I think are 2-0 up now, have got to go to Newport or Riesling, and you just think, for God's sake, maybe a slightly easier tie wouldn't go amiss. There's a few in there. Ipswich getting Maidstone, I think, is a cracking tie for them, by the way. And what a great story for Maidstone. And then if anybody didn't catch Football Focus on Saturday and watch the George Ellacobi interview with Clem, it was phenomenal. The passion that bloke spoke with and the emotion that was there in his voice in that interview was just sensational, and really, really pleased for them that they won. That was great. But yeah, you get a good result against City, and you take that into the FA Cup 4th round, and then the game against Villa at the end of the month. The confidence is back up, and you can get back flying again. Villa's form, has dropped off a little bit. They're still formidable at home, and they're still unbeaten at home. They've only drawn once out of, I think it was the last 15 or 16 games. They've won all their other games. So they've got, it's more difficult, I think, because it's at Villa Park, but certainly you go into that, maybe it's not in the same sort of, hang on, what's going to happen there? If you've got a couple of decent results behind you, and and the confidence is back up. You could have a mega January then, and add in another couple of signings in the meantime. We've still got another 3 weeks until that game, and anything could happen.
Well, absolutely. I mean, in terms of signings, it's probably a good way to move on to the next category, which was it wasn't all great news at the stadium. Like obviously, the blow to lose Joelinton, the kind of first couple of minutes of the second half after the goal had went in, really after they committed suicide, and then we were 2-0 up. Taking Joe off, he didn't look right, did he? Which was a real shame because he was brilliant in the first half. I thought he was good at Anfield, even though the game was tough. For Newcastle, I thought Joe was excellent. He was all over the place. He was, bloody muddle over his face. He was like a gladiator, wasn't he? He was just doing the best that he could. And I don't think it was any more evident, in that game in the first half and then Anfield, just how vital Joelinton is to this Newcastle setup, and to lose him potentially for another period of time, it's going to be difficult. I said in the post-match that he doesn't look right, and he's come back a couple of times now and he's broken down again. And I think he needs a long period away to fully rest and recuperate and not be rushed back into the side. And again, that puts even more pressure on trying to get a deal done for someone like a Calvin Phillips, who can add you that physicality in the midfield. And it's a huge blow, mate, isn't it, to lose Joelinton, I think, in such a tough month as well for the club.
It is, because you want him in that midfield, and he thrives, or that midfield thrives really with those three. And I know Miley's done such a good job, but how well have those three played with Sean and Bruno alongside him? That it's when you see him start to hit that peak again, hit that form that he's had, and be dominant in that midfield, to then lose him. I'll be honest, when he went down, I was surprised to see him come out for the second half. I thought
I thought it would have hooked him,
chipped him off, and kept him, away and protect him at all costs at that point. I guess the feeling was to see how it would go, and it was only 1-0 at that point. As soon as the second goal comes in, you just don't risk anymore. You go, come straight off. But I don't think it will have done any more damage to him, because realistically, he didn't have anything to do in the first 33 seconds of the second half. So he scored the second goal. But it's just frustrating, because like I say, you start to see that dominant midfielder in there again, and to lose him against City too, who have a certain Mr. De Bruyne back in their ranks.
Yeah, that is. I mean, to be fair, he come off the bench and got an assist, didn't he, almost straight away. I mean, having Joelinton in that midfield, and again, I don't think there's been any word officially, is there, from the club in terms of the length of time that he's out injured? I haven't seen anything.
The last thing I thought was just about having scans just to see the sort of the.
So he might make the City game. We don't know. He might make the City game. Who knows? But I mean, it wouldn't be a bad thing to rest him for the game and just let him get back fit. Maybe get him fit for Villa Park. But I mean, the Phillips noise doesn't go away. Apparently Juventus have ducked out the deal. I think that even the loan fee's been dropped down now to $3.5 million, and it's more about negotiating the finer details of maybe an obligation to buy type contract. And again, Newcastle are very conscientious about the FFP ceiling, because and I also think the Lewis Hall things maybe give them a bit of a shudder in terms of this obligation to buy thing. Is you committed to buying that kid in the summer for 28 million quid, and if Eddie Howe's watched him in training and thought, oh, he's well off where I need him to be, I'm not sure about this one. And then they go, well, actually, we've already done the deal to buy him, so we need to get him up to speed quite quickly. Maybe that's just give him a little bit of a worry about Phillips. I no disrespect to Lewis Hall. Phillips is a proven player, international. He was great at Leeds and everything else. And I'm pretty sure if Phillips comes into the side, he'll show everybody what a player he can be in the first kind of 5, 6, 7 games that he plays. But it might just give the club a little bit of a rattle, and that's possibly why they're being very careful with the negotiation of the Phillips deal. But I mean, time will tell, but we definitely need that player in. I mean, the Saudi loans, Mark, have really not been talked about by anybody. I mean, this could go one way or the other. The Saudi loans could either be total smokescreen, nothing's going to happen, or there could literally be 3 or 4 players that the PIF will go, right, who do you want? And they'll go them, and then they'll just end up with, standing in St James's Park holding the flat on the scarf for one, and then we'll be like, oh, fucking hell, there we go. How do you think that's going to work?
The loan thing, I think it's one of those where it's trying to keep as much of it as quiet as possible, isn't it? To kind of keep the wolves from the door. You keep it as quiet as possible, and then just do it without any leaks, without any indication of who it is you're looking at until they actually fly into Newcastle. That's it. Nobody should utter a word.
Kev's got it. Kev's got it. He knows what's going on. He knows what's going on.
Well,
be brilliant.
What was it? I was reading something earlier on. Benzema would be a perfect signing for Arsenal to bring in for the rest of the season as well. So, interesting to see if Arteta goes down that route as well after all the furore about Newcastle potentially using that market.
Well, you've said that before. They like to use it for their own gains, but not for actually Newcastle's gains.
Exactly. Kev's just put in Henderson to come in.
Yeah, we talked about that.
The reaction to that one was as expected, to be fair.
Well, to be fair though, I think all of the people on YouTube, obviously like the members and everybody watches, it was all understood. It was very tongue-in-cheek as a bit of a joke. But my word, social media, God, there was some right prissy fuckwits on there. There really was, that just didn't understand. It was more of a gag. We did a poll, and Toon Polls retweeted it, and big respect to Toon Polls. And when he retweets something, everybody goes and votes on it. But it doesn't half bring out some of the fucking knackers from the woodwork, does it really?
You were making friends yesterday, weren't you? That was
I was. Just, I mean, to be fair, you should never argue with an idiot, as my dad always told me. But I couldn't. I was in one of them feisty moods. I was just calling people a couple of fuckwits on Twitter, really, or X as it's called now. But it is. I mean, people just seem to get angry about everything now on social media, especially on the Newcastle United hashtag. And it's always the same sad virgins with like 30 followers or something, which is probably just the kids that are in their class at school. Or
I had to say that when I was taking a drink, didn't you? Thanks, man.
But I did it on purpose. It's like roulette, mate. It's like roulette. But yeah, I mean, it's one of them things. But the Saudi loans would be interesting. I mean, Jordan's banged in a great name there. Gurusai, we've covered him on Rumour Has It as well. And I suppose the only issue for that is the African Cup of Nations, isn't it? I know he's got a very low release clause, as Jordan says there, but it's the African Cup of Nations is the issue, because he'll be away for, is it 3 weeks? And is that how that's played?
Potentially towards the end of the month. So yeah, he could be unavailable right the way through Jan, which isn't such a bad thing.
It's not a problem if Wilson's fit.
Yeah, because you're only really talking about 2 league games. It's not. I saw people saying it. Well, he's going to miss a huge month, and you're going, is he? There's not City and Villa, yes. Other than that, is he really missing an awful lot? I mean, the one thing I would say, he started the season like an absolute house on fire. He's only scored 3 goals in his last 8 games, which still isn't a terrible return.
Still 3 more than Evan Ferguson, who people want 100 million for, isn't it, really? So if you look at it that way.
Oh, I've done a disservice there. 2 of those were international games, but still, yeah, he's only scored 3 goals in his last 8 games. So it's not a bad return. It's not quite the level he was at. I know his level, he's probably peaked beyond what he normally does, but a striker at that kind of level that's playing first team football to bring in at that sort of fee, it can't really be sniffed at. It seems like a reasonable deal. I don't think his wages would be astronomical.
Yeah.
And to come in and sit behind Isak to work alongside Callum Wilson in that number 2, number 3 striker slot, it seems ideal. And wouldn't, it's not going to hammer you FFP wise either, because you split that 17, 18 million over 3 seasons. It's not an awful lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. You either go that way or you go the Ekatike route, which is a younger player on loan with an option to buy. And there is a couple of options there. The cash could be quite cute with 66. I don't think Solanke from Bournemouth, I think I said that on the video, 40 million quid or whatever for the lad who's having a purple patch is not for me. I don't think he'll get any better than he is this season. I think he'll regress if we sign him.
It's an awful lot of money to sign for a player who's never done this before. And I guess you can say the same about Girassi, but at least the fee is well under half of that of Solanke. So
that's very true. It's not as big of a gamble. Just this one from Kev as well. We did see that tweet, Kev. I won't spend too much time talking about it because I think it's actually a police investigation now. But you're right, mate. It was absolutely rancid, totally unnecessary.
Wow.
Listen, me and Mark both know some Sunderland fans, and they're decent people. You know, everyone's got knackers in the fan base. We've got knackers in our fan base as well. And that was a vile tweet, and I think rightly so. Somebody's reported it, and the police are looking into it now. So they'll deal with it whichever way they want to deal with it. But that's a good example to be very careful.
Swiftly and harshly, I hope.
How far over that line you want to step, really, because it's not really worth it for a few measly likes and tweets from a bunch of shit bags, really. But yeah, I mean the transfer. I think the transfer window will ramp up. I think, Mark, it really will in terms of going into it's fucking I hope so, but going into the last kind of maybe week and a half. I think a lot of clubs with FFP kind of restricting them. I think they're all very much playing a poker game, as a few of the guys have said in the comments, and people will hold their kind of nerve for a long time to see who blinks first, because the likes of City, for example, they'll want Phillips off the book so they can bring somebody else in for that player position. Other teams will need to get their wage bill down, like when Liverpool and Chelsea use Saudi to get rid of a lot of the dead wood or the guys who are past the sell-by date. Free agents like David De Gea, if he wants a club, he's going to have to lower his demands and he's going to have to pick a club. So there's only a finite number of days these people can get a deal done. So I think definitely, what we are now, we're on the 8th now. It's only just open for a week. I think give it another week and a half, we'll start to see some movement. But I wouldn't be surprised to see some high-profile loan deals, Mark, as opposed to purchases, because of just the nature of the FFP.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of teams that will be waiting for the summer to offload a few before they can start targeting more. I know there were reports that Chelsea were looking to sign a couple more players permanently in this month. I've got no idea how they managed to do that.
They can't do that. No way they can do that. No chance.
But yeah, I think the loan market will see a lot of movement. Teams that have dropped out of the Champions League, for example, sort of moving players on, perhaps, or
some big guns from Serie A and La Liga might come over here
maybe
as well, potentially.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of potential for movement there. So I think, don't forget, we've got that 2-week gap after this weekend where teams can spend more time focusing on getting players in for that fortnight to get them in training with a new team, give them a gap before they hit matches again. So that's almost ideally placed to start. Maybe if you can bring one or two in this week, early next week, then it gives them time to bed in a little bit before you start the games.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it isn't just as easy, especially midway through a season, to come in and and obviously hit the ground running. You need proven players to do that. And I think those players come at a premium. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. And I do think there'll be a lot of takers for some of these players, but there'll also be a lot of teams that are struggling to clear the room for them in their squad, really, isn't it? You know what I mean? So there is going to be a lot of poker face going on, I think, in terms of those players. But it'll be an interesting window, and we'll try and cover as many of the rumour hazards as we possibly can. But it's time for our non-Newcastle related subject of the show, which is Out of Toon. And we're starting off Out of Toon on quite a sad note, mate, actually, aren't we? Because one of the most famous footballers that's ever played the game has sadly passed away today. It's this guy here. If you don't know who he is, you probably should. I think a few of you have already mentioned it in the comments. It's Franz Beckenbauer, the man who really changed the whole game of what a centre half was, or people thought they were. De Kaiser, as he was nicknamed, Mark. I mean, obviously way before our time, but the legacy of what this man did in the game, not just in Germany but world football. I mean, what a player, man.
I think he actually wasn't that far before our time when you go back and think about it, which is
God, you make me feel old now.
He did awful well as a manager as well, and there's a reason why he's labelled as one of the greatest footballers of all time, because he was a ridiculously good footballer in that sort of. What do they call it? Is it libero, or what they would have as like a sweeper role as a centre half? He was phenomenal. I think the origins of that that calm centre half on the ball, good ability to pass and move the ball around, and he just brilliant. He's won
He paved the
so
way,
much.
Mark. He paved the way
Yeah,
for the likes of
absolutely.
Sven Botman and Cher that we love to watch now. That those guys wouldn't be playing that position like they are if it wasn't for someone like Beckenbauer all them years ago doing what he did.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, he set the bar high, didn't he? Is it 3 European Cups, 4 or 5 Bundesligas, World Cup, European Championship, all sorts, and World Cups as player and manager for Germany as well. So, look, it's another one. It's another huge name that we lose out of the world of football. Really only 78 as well. He's, it is a sad one. It's another football and giant, as George has put in the comments there.
Yeah.
That we lose in those traditional origins of football. That we lose rapidly now. I think, and we're starting to see that old part of the game completely disappear.
But you start to think about, people talk about the greatest 11 ever play the game, and people throw out names like Beckenbauer, Pele, Maradona, all moved on now to that squad in the sky now, mate, aren't they? You know what I mean? It's really sad. What a team that's going to be. Absolutely, that's a team you wouldn't want to play against, wouldn't it, mate? But yeah, I mean, rest in peace to Beckenbauer and all the people. I'm sure it's a sad time over in Germany. I'm sure, national treasure over there, and they'll really be feeling that. I'm sure the Bundesliga will have things planned to honor that brilliant player and the legacy that he had as well. But from the good in terms of Beckenbauer and how good he was to the bad. I mean, Manchester United have gone through in the cup tonight, which is bad for starters. They've won 2-0 against Wigan, and some Wigan fans have really taken it difficult. Even before the game, some of them were vaping, even at 11 years old or whatever the fuck this kid was tonight, which was nuts, really. I did laugh because I think I tweeted his dad would be like, Max and Paddy, how dare you? How dare you? You can imagine his father watching him on the telly, man. My God.
I did joke about it. I put on one he's getting grounded. Then I remembered that we were going to talk about the young lad that played for Blackburn at the weekend. He was so young, he couldn't have the club sponsor on his shirt, as he's too young to vape. Which my response on X was, Wigan fans, hold my beer. I mean,
hold my beer.
You couldn't make it up, really, could you? It was just, I mean, it's such a brilliant story for Rory Finneran to play that game. But honestly, when I saw it popped up and I looked and I went, was that kid? No, that kid didn't have. I rewound it and looked at Rich and went,
you and thousands more. You and thousands more. He's been hosed on social media. It really has.
Honestly.
As Stu Bag says that his man would be so proud. I must admit. Chris has just mentioned there again, one of them great players that missed Bobby Charlton as well. That's another one, Chris. He probably makes that squad as well. And we've got a new member as well, Jordan. Good to see you in the members category, Jordan. Good to have you on board, mate. But yeah, so in terms of this kid being on social media can be a dangerous place these days, especially if you happen to come across a certain former Newcastle midfielder whose head has fell clean off. He could be in the last scene of the fucking Highlander movie with Sean Connery. Who am I talking about? I'm talking about this man right here, Joey Barton, the thinking man's footballer, as he likes to be known as. Joey has a new podcast coming out. It's not called Twats or Us podcast. No, I think it's called Talking Sense or something like that, which is quite ironic, really. But we kind of stayed away from this. I had a few people requesting rant videos about Joey and all this, and we just didn't really want to get involved with it, Mark, did we? But he seemingly is attacking every single person in the world. Is Joey Barton. You know that movie Scott Pilgrim versus the World? It's like Joey Barton versus the world right now. He just seems to be taking everybody on. His biggest gripe, we'll start with this one, is female pundits. And he seems to be gathering a bit of momentum, doesn't he, in terms of a little cult following. I said cult following behind him on social media. I mean, some of the female pundits, let's call it right, and some of the male pundits are shite. It doesn't matter what gender they are, they're shite. We say that quite regularly. But Joey seems to have a real problem with female pundits, mate. And do you think he's justified?
Well, if he labelled it as there are some pundits that don't deserve to be on television, yes, but they're equally, like you say, exactly right. There are some males and females that are on there Owen
Owen
Hargreaves.
Hargreaves, Rio Ferdinand, Paul Scholes.
We can list them, yeah.
We could go on.
An awful lot of them had stays in Manchester or Liverpool.
Yeah, and much better careers than Joe Barton, by the way. That's besides the point.
But I get a point to a degree, but then he starts having a pop at. He had a pop at Eni Aluko, who, to be fair, I do think is pretty poor as a pundit.
She's not the best, but
no, but then again, she's not alone in it in terms of who's there. Michael Owens is another one. He's dreadful.
He's dreadful.
And so I get a point. If you're going to criticize people. That's absolutely fine. But it has absolutely nothing to do with who they are. It's about what they provide. And that doesn't matter what race, religion, sex, whatever it is. That's fine. We've talked about this before. Then there was the moment that Union Berlin tweeted and sort of, well, like, if any, we're sorry if anybody's sort of offended by what's going on, to which he then starts having a pop at the Germans. You're like, for God's sake, when at some point somebody's going to have to take his phone off him, because he's just going after absolutely everybody. I thought the irony of him starting to tweet war pictures to a team that actually really wasn't established until 1966 wasn't the sharpest measure in the world, because Union Berlin became them in the mid-60s. They'd been through other guises beforehand, so not his brightest one. But he's just, honestly, I think he'd had a pop about what did he liken them to Fred and Rose West, didn't he?
Yeah, that was the bit for me that he kind of lost the room for me there. I mean, a lot of people watching it with popcorn, having a giggle and stuff like that in the background, just Joey having a bit of a meltdown. I think a lot of it is just him pushing his agenda for his podcast, really, is what it is. It's the easiest way to do it.
Exactly it. Yeah. He's sort of, and I said this the other day, I think it's almost Trumpism, isn't it? Where he says so much outlandish thing, he gets a load of people to follow him that will then willing to give him money for his podcast. And I think that's probably what it's all about at the end of the day. But look, have an opinion about whether somebody's any good. And I get there's an argument about people being in jobs they shouldn't be in. If you're good enough to do the job, you're good enough to do the job. It doesn't matter who you are.
Well, I mean, like I say, hey, listen, you can have an opinion, and people agree or disagree with it. It's up to them. Like Cushy says that you two are shit. I don't know whether
I agree completely.
I don't know whether Joey Barton has hacked your feed, Cushy, but obviously that's your opinion, Bonnie lad. You know what I mean? You don't need to watch, mate. There's plenty of other people you can go watch. But yeah, I mean, if Joey Barton,
it'll be really Cushy. Thank you.
Thanks, Cushy. Love to you, mate. Yeah, have a good one, mate. But yeah, I think if Joey isn't happy with the female pundits and stuff like that, that's fine. But he's actually quite an intelligent bloke, and I find the fact that he can't articulate it in a way that I'm sure that he's more than capable of doing. Because he started off doing it all right when he first got taken task on it, but he just seems to have gone a bit more kind of intense as the weeks have gone by. And I think it is just to do with the pushing this podcast and get people listening to it and all that kind of stuff. And fair enough.
Exactly what he's doing.
He knows what he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. And I mean, to be fair, it is a bit childish in terms of ITV. I think they probably should have just ignored it. And Gary Neville jumped on, and he what did he say? He was going to empty Gary Neville, which I thought was quite humorous. It was a bit like he started to go a little bit. He started to go a little bit shameless. That scene with is it Stephen Graham with a machete in the shop? It was a little bit like that as a social media element, really. But it was all a bit crazy, really. But yeah, I'm sure it will quiet down once Joey Barton probably gets his podcast up and running and all of that. I'm pretty sure as well. But yeah, very, very, very strange. So what's this? 66 say, watch out, lads. Joey will bash you because he's hard as nails. I'm sure he will. 66. I think we've been relatively fair to him, I think, in all fairness. But I don't really agree with the way he's going on and stuff like that. I just think he needs to just switch off, log off, mate. I had a couple of days on social media the other day because I just thought it was shit. And just the patter was minging, and just the way people were going on. I think I said to them, I can't be asked. I want to disappear for a couple of days and go for a walk and enjoy the scenery or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And maybe Joey Barton has to do that in all fairness, but it's up to him.
I think all TV companies now should give the option that Amazon give, and I think BBC have done it at times for games. Is just have a stadium audio. and where you just, and I actually watched a couple of the games when the Amazon stuff was on over Christmas, and I didn't have the commentary on. I didn't listen to any of the pundits. I just watched the game with the stadium track in the background. It was perfect. There was no crap coming from them. You can have whatever else on in the background. You just focus on the game, on the noise of the game. Brilliant. Absolutely loved it.
Well, that's exactly it, mate. That is exactly it, you know. So it's good. Cushy's back said he can't understand, Joey. I'm not French. That's very true, Cushy. Joey is fluent in the language of French as well, as we all remember, which was quite a funny clip, I think, to be fair. But that's us pretty much wrapped up, as you'll be glad to hear, Cushy, because you're sick of us two talking shite. So thank you very much in the comments. Everyone in the comments who's jumped in, we really appreciate it. Smash that like button if you can. It really helps the channel grow and helps all the algorithms out there into the old world of YouTube and everything else. As I mentioned at the start, if you haven't already, click subscribe. I'd love you to come and join us. Over 6,200 subs. So we really appreciate everything that everyone's done, all the buttons being smashed and recommending us to people, which is really good. We've had a cracking year last year. Hopefully this year will be just as good. All free content. As I said, there is an option to give back the channel. If you fancy being a member, you get early access to videos, etc., etc. We'll be back soon enough with more kind of match previews, transfer links, and everything else. And might be the odd rant coming in. Certainly stay tuned for the thought of the day tomorrow, which a few of you have already asked about in the comments. So come and check us out first thing in the morning. We might have something to say about the recent fan advisory board that was announced by the club earlier on this evening. So have a cracking night wherever you're doing, everybody, and we'll see you later.
See you guys.